Hello and welcome. I'm Dave Hill, the founder, publisher and editor of the journalism website onlondon.co.uk, whose array of top writers brings you coverage of London's politics, development, places and people. My guest for this podcast is Elly Baker. She is a Labour member of the London Assembly, the elected body that holds the Mayor of London to account. She is also Labour's spokesperson on transport and currently chairs the Assembly's Transport Committee. Elly, thank you for joining me. Let's start with fare dodging. The Transport Committee has been looking into this recently and sent letters to both Transport for London and to the British Transport Police. So can you tell us about those letters and what action the committee would like to see?
Thanks, Dave. Just say that we chose to do fare evasion because it is a really, I do hear from people, particularly in outer London, that is something that really frustrates them. And we wanted to get to the bottom of it and sort of cut through some of the interesting headlines that you get around fare evasion at the moment. And the things that we really want to see are, TfL were... TfL are great with stats. They're great with data. So they gave us lots and lots of stats and data. And we were like, okay, that's fine. But they don't always line up. And also, we don't necessarily know how that's going to impact fare evasion in the future. So, fill in the gaps. Keep reporting back to us. Let's make sure that we actually see an impact on this. But we also really focused on, because we heard that actually the vast majority of fare evasion is accidental or it's just opportunistic, the gates are open, stuff like that. And a lot of that could be solved by making sure that we have the right amount of staff on station at the right time, the gates are working, all of this sort of stuff. So we really asked them to have a bit of a think about what they're doing on that. And the other key thing that we heard was when, in the small amount of times that something does get, aggressive or violent, which is small, but it does, when there are violent incidents against staff, the majority, large proportion of those are related to fare evasion. The staff can't get people there. They can't get the police there quick enough when something goes wrong. And that obviously means that there's no real incentive for the consistent offenders to stop if they don't really think anything's going to happen. So Those are the sort of areas we're looking at.
Okay, yeah. So just interestingly, so it seems to be a practical matter of simply deploying your station staff a bit more, with a little bit more of an eye to just being at the barriers, the gate line, and making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to. And I guess the presence of staff is an incentive for people to, forgetful people to remember, and delinquent people to maybe think twice about it. Simple as that.
Yeah. Unless you're a real hardcore and you're gonna barge through regardless, of course, which there are people like that. Then having people around, and I go through a station pretty much every day where there is a reasonable amount of it, and I can see when there are people there that it just makes it less likely. When there's staff there, it just makes it a more human place. That's my belief, that we rely too much on technological solutions, which are tremendously helpful for certain circumstances, but not the solution for everything.
Okay, have you had a response from TfL yet?
Not yet, no, but the letter has only gone out a few days ago, so we don't. It normally takes a couple of weeks, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But, so we'll look forward to that response. But I think it's really important when we do work that we actually follow up on it, that we don't just go, right, this is what you think you should do, TfL. So I hope we'll return to it in the future.
Okay, and interesting about the British Transport Police, there was an incident recently at Liverpool Street where I attempted to report some sort of antisocial behaviour on the tube, and discovered, cutting a very long story short, that actually contacting the British Transport Police and reporting an incident of that kind is a bit difficult and complicated. Nobody could direct me easily to the British Transport Police actually at Liverpool Street Station. And then when I went home, the form I had to fill in, I fairly quickly began to lose the will to live. So what's going on with the British Transport Police? Are they sort of letting us down a bit? Do you think? Are they just not got the right priorities? What's your view on all that?
Well, I mean, a long time ago, I was actually a union officer for the British Transport Police for a couple of interesting years. I mean, I strongly suspect, I'm interested to hear what they say when they write back, basically, but I strongly suspect this is a resourcing issue. And a lot of stuff then also is getting escalated to them, where I'd like to see it just be less likely to happen if it's talking about antisocial behaviour. But they do need to be there and accessible. And I think there is a wider issue in terms of making sure that whoever the relevant authority is open to feedback or incidents on the transport network, because people need to be able to feel that they can report their experience, get some action, get acknowledged, and I think that is a bit of a wider problem as well. So
Okay, good. Okay, now there was a spate of publicity about fare dodging a bit earlier this year, and this prompted me to sort of look back through the history books a bit, and I've got a piece in front of me here which I do remember from happening at the time. This is 2012. Boris Johnson. Big announcement, Evening Standard headline, Boris Johnson slams the fare dodging parasites who cost London £75 million, and there was a big campaign, more plainclothes officers, more action, and so on and so forth. So, not new. And also, I discovered when I wrote something about this a fantastic a film that was done by what I suppose was then London Transport from the 1980s,
yes,
talking about bus fare evasion on buses, and quite stern stuff. You could end up going to prison. This was a big thing, and I am sadly old enough to remember when dodging your fare on a bus was a piece of cake, and on the tube it was pretty easy. So it's bad, but it's not new. My sense is that some of this is really part of this sort of wider lawless London campaign that politicians of a certain variety have been engaged in, actually, and pundits, for a very long time. We've seen a lot of it in the last few months. Am I right?
yeah, you're right. Yes, you're right. You're right. And I think it's really important that this is why I wanted to talk about fair evasion in the committee, to try and bring some actual nuance and a realistic look at it that says, yeah, people are annoyed about it because when you're paying your fare, especially when people don't have a lot of money going on, they don't want to see somebody hopping a barrier. That is frustrating. But the idea that there are London has gone feral. It is just ridiculous, and it's part of using London, particularly, and Sadiq as the mayor as sort of a London political boogeyman, basically. So you don't want to be like that, do you? And it's just tremendously divisive. And it does no good politically, it does no good to anyone because it just makes everyone angry at everyone else. So it's perfectly possible to go, yes, we need to take some practical steps to make sure that this is happening and not, be chasing people around Stratford tube station, which is an odd approach, I think.
Okay, but having agreed with each other in a very nice way, it could be argued that the kind of political stunt approach to fare dodging has kind of concentrated minds. It's, I'm on the issue. I mean, would the Transport Committee have been taking it up in July had there not been stuff going on in the weeks and months beforehand?
You make a good point. You make a good point that while the majority of our work, or I like the majority of our work to be sort of planned in and sort of deep looks at things, we do sometimes react to stuff that is in the news. But do I think it's put us in I'm glad the Transport Committee could contribute to that. Do I think overall it has put us in a better position, balancing our intervention versus some of the negative publicity that staff and London have got? I mean, I hadn't really considered it, but I don't think it has. Do you know what I mean? I would rather we looked at it at some point in the fullness of time. But there we are.
Okay, right. Thanks very much. So let's move quickly on to bus speeds. Now, I
Yes.
did a piece a while back
Yes.
showing that bus speeds overall had got worse, got slower, and this has been going on for a while.
Yeah.
And I've got one of my contributors is going to produce a piece on this, an update on this quite soon. What's your general view on the position with the bus service in London?
The bus service in London, to be perfectly honest, they probably worry me more than anything else. I remember very early on when after I got elected, I had various conversations with very long-standing transport people who sort of sought me out. And I remember one person, wish I could remember which one it was, who said to me, buses used to be the jewel in the crown of London transport. And I remember that because obviously I grew up in London. We're not there now. I don't think it has the same priority. Considering the volume of people that we get around on the buses, I think that's a mistake. So I think that the bus speed is a massive issue because it's very clear that when buses are slower and less reliable, then less people use it, you have less money. That leads to TfL justifying reducing numbers of buses. It gets slower. We're in not a massive, but a little bit of a slow decline there, I think. And I think the two things that are really key is bus priority measures, but that means bus priority measures full stop. They need to be considered first. It's older people, younger Londoners, disabled people who use it. They don't have other options in a lot of cases. And we're not really talking about congestion and the impact of congestion enough. And I'm hoping to do some more on that as well. But we're just going in the wrong, not going in the wrong direction. We're not improving fast enough. And buses are getting squeezed out, as far as I can see. But we are also, TfL are consistently, and it's their stated aim, just slicing bits off our inner London bus network, particularly in terms of curtailment of routes, frequency cuts. And I just think that's a mistake, to be honest. I'm not saying there aren't changes in certain areas that need to be made, but as a consistent policy, I think that's a mistake. And I probably get more people raising problems with their buses of various kinds than any other type of casework or issue raised.
Okay, so if buses are becoming in a small and subtle way less of a priority, what's going up the agenda instead that maybe is contributing to the difficulties?
Everything. I try not to put one form of transport against another, although we might get onto that in a second. But I think it's buses sliding down, and although it might seem a bit niche, I have an ongoing problem with TfL not doing proper equality impact assessments on their spending decisions. And I think if they did, they would go, oh, hold on a minute. These are all the people who don't have options here, where our older disabled Londoners are. We might need to rebalance our efforts a little bit.
All right, that's very interesting. But maybe that's something I can follow up on the website. Now, so moving on to cycling. Now, so it's somebody who walks around a lot. I find that basically cycling is often promoted as a sort of kinder, gentler, civilizing influence on high streets in particular. But what I find is an awful lot of nuisance cycling, actually people on pavements and so on, the sort of casually ignoring the rules of the road and so on. It just seems to me that London's cycling culture, if we can use that term, is not what it should be. Now, what is your view about that?
I think you're right. I can't avoid that. And obviously I've been thinking about this for over 4 years now. And I would love to do a really deep dive into road and culture and approaches and the psychology of it. Unfortunately, I haven't done that, but yes, it is, and I think there is. I often say it's like no mode of transport is inherently better than any other. They all have their place. We need to use them appropriately, and I also think there's a problem that some cyclists sort of identify as cyclists. No one identifies as a bus user. Do you know what I mean? They just get the bus. But the increase of delivery riders, some of whom aren't regular cyclists until they have to do this job, and your dockless e-bikes, which are sold as a nice fun way to get about and not a serious mode of transport, that's not helping, and we're not putting adequate responsibilities on different types of road and street user, I think.
Okay. Something just quickly on the very contentious issue of bus stop bypasses. Just can remind me and our audience of what you have done about that so far. So I think you've drawn attention to people's anxiety about the design of them. Is that right? Yeah. Can you just remind us about that?
So, I mean, I've been sort of looking into this for quite some time, and I did have previously both raised the concerns about the design, and also I have previously asked TfL to pause the rollout of further bus stop bypasses until they can really make sure the design is as good as can be. But there's a real problem with, to be honest, just listening to people using those pavements who might not be comfortable is a real problem. And there's some really badly designed bus stop bypasses out there. I mean, I was on one a couple of weeks ago, and a woman with a buggy, she couldn't get on the bus because the bus stop had been squeezed so much by the cycle lane. She had to trundle all the way around the back of the bus stop in order to get. This isn't helpful.
Shouldn't they be done away with altogether?
Well, I want to see. I have. The problem comes that TfL and people who are really a big fan say that if we can get the cyclists to stop when they should stop, then they'll be fine. The unanswered question is, can you? At the moment, we don't seem to be able to, but I don't really think we're even trying. So, I wouldn't like to say that we should stop, but I struggle to. I'm not hearing the people who defend it give a good argument to me about how they can really work without impacting people's ability to get in the bus. And
it does seem.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. No, so I know it does seem to me that there is a sort of lack of leadership about good cycling behaviour, and I would say the London cycling campaign is just doesn't want to know about this issue. For example, I don't hear anything from the mayor, and I don't really hear anything from a lot of politicians, sort of on the left, let's say, who tend to be supporters of cycling as a green mode of transport.
Yeah.
So you have the interesting situation where the critique of cycling policy and cycling culture is tending to come from the Conservatives on the London Assembly, and they of course have got their own priorities, which is about private motor cars. So it just seems to me that nobody is really saying the things that need to be said, which speaks for how all the different modes of transport should be balanced and work together in a way that enhances streets for Londoners, including the pavements.
Yeah.
Am I right? Should I be in charge? Don't answer that one.
But I'm not going to answer that one.
What do you think of the general? So I could answer that one as well. Do you think there is a sort of bit of a vacuum where there should be leadership on some of these issues?
I think that, I don't think there's a vacuum, because I think there is a very clear narrative about it, but it is primarily cycling is great, everyone should be on a bike, which is not realistic either for getting large amounts of people round a big city. I mean, this is the practicality of it. We can't all be on bikes. Do you know what I mean? We just can't. How would everything else get around? How would our goods get around? So I think there is actually a lot of leadership. I don't think there's enough critical thinking about it. That's what I think is the problem. The gap between where people think is the right place to be and where the majority of Londoners are, is increasingly getting wider, and that's just not helpful on something which should be evidence-based on transport, you know?
Okay, great. Thanks very much. So, lastly, and as we speak, it looks as if there are going to be tube strikes next week, sort of beginning over the weekend. I'm not going to ask you to comment on any of the detail of the current dispute or anything, but just briefly, and you're a person with a trade union background. You were endorsed by ASLEF, the drivers' union, to become an assembly member. Just if you can, just sort of sum up what you think this sort of general industrial relations climate is with the London Underground at the moment, and how could things be improved, perhaps?
I think it's a really interesting question, and I actually I used to work for a transport trade union. I didn't represent tube workers or London transport workers, but I did. And just have to say, you know, if the strikes go ahead, they're going to be incredibly inconvenient for Londoners. You know, I've put my trainers on and walked to work. You know, many times in the past when they were much more frequent than they are today. And I suppose no one really knows what's going on apart from the people in that room doing the negotiation. So I certainly don't know, you know, what might change. But from the wider context, I think there's a couple of things that occur to me. One of which is I do have had a regular sort of feedback and from the unions, just when I talk to them, about it not being a very healthy industrial relation position, and that really disappoints me. This is a TfL. And you know, I was a union officer for a very long time, and I saw, certainly in transport, the approach from being reasonably collaborative and only falling out about the things that you need to fall out about, to a much more sort of HR heavy, laying down the law. We don't like the, you know, and I just think that's unhelpful. And yeah, I've heard certain things about the collective negotiations, the way TfL approaches some of them. Well, as an ex-trade union official, I'm just like going, what are you doing? This is just guaranteed to wind up trade unions. So I am concerned about that. And I also am in wider concern. We have seen over a long period of time the number of staff on the tube decline, and the number of staff working for TfL directly and not on the tube decline. And that does have an impact on workloads and work-life balance and all this sort of stuff. And that's the sort of thing I do here. I came into this job in the middle of COVID, and people were really under the cosh. I'm not sure we've ever entirely recovered from that. And so that's when people focus on hours, reclaiming, things like that. And to be honest, it's just really important for me that TfL, working for transport, remains a good, stable, healthy, happy job, because otherwise it's going to be an impact on obviously all the Londoners who work on transport, but also those people who use the transport network. It's not going to be as good as it can be unless we're doing the right thing.
Okay, that's great. Well, I think we've covered just about everything we started out to cover. So thank you very much for joining me, Elly. Thank you, audience, for joining us both. And be sure to read on london.co.uk at all times. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.